Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of the Curling Legends podcast. My name's Kevin Palmer. Each week during the curling season, I'll share a conversation with a player or storyteller from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We're going to cover curling from the early days of the slide through to the adoption of the free guard zone. Errol Klinck is on the show today. I want to thank you for listening, and if you can, please rate us on iTunes. If you have friends or family members that are unfamiliar with podcasting, please help them listen to the show. You can get us on iTunes, Stitcher, any number of smartphone applications that you might download on your phone. You can also listen to us on Google Play, iTunes Radio, and now we're available on iHeartRadio. You can also visit us on our webpage, curlinglegends.ca, as well as our Facebook page, facebook.com/curlinglegends. As always, thank you to Jerry Gertz and Curling Zone for supporting the show, as well as Steve Lobel for providing the artwork, and Mark Rogman, who produced the music. Errol Klinck, otherwise known as the Colonel, is our guest on the show today. Errol grew up in Saskatchewan, and as a young man curled at the Regina Curling Club, getting an opportunity to battle some of the greats of that era in the late 60s. He later moved to Winnipeg, and had an opportunity early in his time there to play with the Duguid rink in the 1971 MCA Bonspiel as a spare for Bryan Wood. But the Colonel predominantly skipped and had middling success throughout the 70s, had a run at the MCA in 1974 that he'll share. But as the early 80s approached, for the most part, had one of those highly competitive A-group teams that you might find at many of the clubs in Winnipeg. And then in 1985, that same A-group rink made their way through the city zones to the provincial Tankard. They were seeded 32nd out of 32 teams that year, and somehow by Saturday night, they were the only undefeated team in the event and had to win 2 more games to go to the Brier. So the Colonel will share that story, as well as many others. He'll talk about his grandfather, Ozzie Barkwell, who skipped the Western Canadian representative at the first ever Brier in 1927. And we'll talk about many of the other teams of that era in Winnipeg, Horace Melischuk, Claire de Blonde, as well as talk about the heartbreaks that go along with losing a provincial final, both for his team, but also for others like Gary Ross and Mark Franklin. Please enjoy my conversation with Errol, the Colonel, Klinck.
I just was sitting here looking at some 60th birthday cards, if you can imagine.
60th?
Hey? 60th, yeah. I thought it's like 16 years ago.
That
How old is that?
I noticed it. Well,
old.
That's old. Well, I mean, you notice it when you see somebody like Arnold Palmer passes away, and you start to think, I remember when that guy was young and strapping.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I remember when I was young and strapping, and I'm not anymore.
Yeah, well, I guess we're all getting there then.
Yeah. Well, I got to admit,
Some of us, anyway.
I was always amazed by your ability to avoid that Labatt lump, though, or the Molson muscle. When most guys, you always managed to, I don't know. I mean, you were probably a 30 waist or 32 waist, like well into your.
I'd be 32 for sure.
32, yeah.
I might have hit the 34, but it would have been 32 most of the time.
Yeah, that's got to be genetics, because it's probably not lifestyle.
No, that's right.
Why don't we start with Ozzie Barkwell, because I want to hear about Ozzie, and tell us kind of your connection and the history there and what you remember of him.
Okay, well, first of all, Ozzie was pretty old. Lived in a little town called Yellowgrass. He was the elevator operator, right?
Okay.
And about 5 girls and 1 boy. But anyway, in those days, I mean, whoever really heard of the game of curling? But the only thing I can tell you, outside of the fact that I think he was the only one in Saskatchewan who had a matched set of curling stones.
Okay.
Now, I can't be, you can't go by gospel, but I've heard that, so I can see that. But anyway, that's a long time ago, and he worked hard, and Yellowgrass was a small little farm town, and there wasn't a lot going on, and my mother was there, and my dad, his dad, my grandfather, had my other guy. He had 3 farms that he looked after and did well for himself, even though it was like the dirty 30s and that kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the curling, like I never ever saw my grandfather throw a rock or anything. That was, I don't know, he was either getting too old and had retired by the time the kid, and he didn't live past 75-ish or something. So, I was still like teenager at that time. So I never did really see him.
Did you ever get a chance to kind of ask him about his experience? So he was he was the first representative at he was a representative at the first Brier in 1927. Now, did he represent Saskatchewan or did he represent Western Canada or?
No, well, he did because nobody else wanted to go. Like nobody from Manitoba went, so he was the only one from Western Canada that decided to go. And they thought they would just go on a goodwill tour. They had no idea that this was big competition.
It wasn't even the McDonald Brier at that point yet, I assume, right? It was.
No, they didn't name that until the next year.
Okay.
He missed that by 1 year.
So they found out about this Bonspiel essentially out east, and it came about that maybe they should go.
Well, I think they got invited by the Ontario Curling Association.
Mm-hmm.
They had that at that time. I don't know. So they said, they would go, but nobody from Winnipeg wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Or from Manitoba. So they were the only ones from the West, as it turned out. So that's how.
Do you recall how they finished up?
Oh, I know they didn't win it. I think they got beat by somebody in Ontario. But they had a good time.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I had heard, I don't know if you know this story, but I think it was in the Brier book by Bob Weeks, that Ozzie is noted as the person who suggested they go from 14 ends down to 12. I don't know if that was done.
It could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been.
I can't even fathom 14 ends, much less 12 at this stage.
Oh, no, I can't. No. I can't do the 14 either, but I played in a 12.
So you still grew up in that town, right?
I'm in Regina.
At that
yeah, and my dad was always interested in curling. He was always interested in sports anyway, but we curled at the Regina Curling Club, which was a nice little competitive club. And I really didn't get into it until I would be about 16.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my dad would take me to the curling club when he had to go on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever, and I'd have to play with my toys or do whatever, until I finally took some interest in it. When I started, my dad would get me out there when his game was finished, and he would show me, kind of how to throw a rock. And in those days, I mean, we didn't have slip-on sliders, and we didn't have curling boots, so what would really happen is if you had a nice pair of shoes with a leather sole,
mm-hmm.
when you stepped on the ice, you just, make sure your leather sole was kind of, if it was a little moist or a little damp and frozen, so you could slide with your shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a pair of toe rubbers, so one foot had a toe rubber and one had your normal sliding shoe, so you could slide up and down the ice and try and sweep.
Like a dress shoe almost. Yeah.
And a pair of loafers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was it. So that's how, and that's basically how I started. And then one of my dad's friends, he had 3 or 4 sons, so one of them would stay out after maybe their competition or game or whatever and help me for, a couple of walks down and back. And then eventually my dad said, okay, well, do you want to come and curl with me? So I would be, I don't know, maybe 17, 18, somewhere in there. I know I was probably, I was still in school anyway when I was curling with him regularly at the Regina Curling Club.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, he was a pretty good curler. In fact, he was a very good curler. He won the Regina shirt sleeve Bonspiel back, I don't know, somewhere where I was 20, so that'd be in the 60s, maybe 60s. And first prize was 4 electric stoves.
4 electric stoves?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the first prize. Yeah. They called it the Regina shirt sleeve Bonspiel or something at that time, because it was always in the spring.
Oh, okay, because it's springtime game. I see. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was a pretty good competitive curler. There's no doubt about that. And then as we kept on, getting a little older and stuff, and I started curling a little better and whatever, when we were curling out of the Regina Curling Club, we would run into the Richardsons because that's where they curled.
Mm-hmm.
And we would actually win our fair share against them, although they won most of them, but we would beat them the odd time. I'll tell you, one of my really remembrance of experiences, we were curling against the Richardsons for a zone spot, and I think it was into the provincial playoff, or at least into the southern provincial playoff. because they may have had to split at that time, but it goes way back so far, I can't remember. Anyway, we're curling at our own home club, Regina Curling Club, and the ice level is about 5 feet below the viewing area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see really well, because they had curling club had burned down and they had rebuilt it with a 6-sheeter. But anyway, we got out there to curl this in this playdown against the Richardson, so the winner goes either to the Southern playoffs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So get in the curling club. The place is absolutely packed.
Mm-hmm.
You can hardly get to your locker to change your boots, right?
And how old are you at this point?
I'd be, I think I was probably 18 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could have been in my 20s. It could have been in my early 20s because I was probably working at Eaton somewhere there. So, yeah, I'm quite excited. I mean, I never played before, this many people before. This is really good. As we go down and walk on the ice surface, the whole back wall is full of people.
Mm-hmm.
You sit down in a hack and you fart. Everybody knows. And I'll tell you, I was almost shaking thinking, geez, and I'm playing lead, so I got chucked first there. So I thought, oh my God, I've never seen this many people before.
Mm-hmm.
After the first couple of walks down and a couple back, it was good. And we had a really good game with the Richardsons, but of course, they won.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a runaway or anything like that, and they were well deserving of winning, I guess, and they did. So
I heard that Ernie had quite the presence too, and a lot of times, they said that you could almost chalk up 2 on the board just when they showed up.
Yeah, he was one of the finest gentlemen you ever want to meet in curling.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, he was just a gem. And years after, when I saw him in a couple of bars and stuff, absolutely just a gem. He'd come over, he'd remember your name and everything, and absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Great guy. And Arnie was very quiet. And, of course...
Sam?
Eh?
Well, Sam was the chatty one, wasn't he?
Yeah, Sam was. He was funny. He was a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
A good guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's go back to... we would go out to a little... Like Manitoba, every little town, if they had, half decent population in their town, they'd have either a 2 or 3 sheet curling rink, right?
Mm-hmm.
With natural ice. And you would go out there and curl some of these little Bonspiels, which are all close around Regina. You didn't have to drive very far. Well, I'll tell you, it's friggin' cold. And that's why those heavy sweaters that you see people wearing years ago.
In the photos,
you needed
yeah.
those. You had to have that. And in fact, in some of those little towns, the ice was so heavy, you could hardly throw the rock down from one end to the other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how heavy the ice was. And if there's a couple of cracks in the board and there's a storm going on, the snow would be coming through the cracks. One or two ice surface.
So it might actually snow in the rink, yeah.
Yeah. It was just, but you all went because, that's the thing you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we had cricket ice. And in those days, you would have to throw the opposite turn to hit a rock.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would fall back, right? You would throw the wrong turn, and it would fall back and hit the rock. We had quite a bit of that when the ice would shift here at the Assiniboine Curling Club in Winnipeg. But you got used to reading it, whereas now it's all pretty well straight, and there was no such thing as we got matched rocks, and the handles are all the right ones, and some are short, and some are stubby, and some are fat and wide.
Did anyone take notice of the conditioning of rock, how rocks matched up, or was the ice such a limiting factor that it really didn't matter?
Yeah, I don't think they really cared back in those days about rock matching. I really don't think they worried about that too much. As long as the rocks are all the same size, and then later on the rocks were all the same size, but I mean, you would go out of town somewhere, and one rock could be fat, and one rock could be skinny or something, but nobody cared. You just played along.
So you keep the skinny one to get between the guards, and you keep the fatter one to make a hit?
One for hit. The fat one for hit. That's right. Yeah, and then, too, in those days, Kevin, like, we were doing a lot of hitting. There wasn't the strategy and stuff that today.
And Saskatchewan in particular is well known as the province that used to hit all the time.
Sure.
That lacked a lot of the come-around strategy that maybe started to develop in Manitoba and Ontario and Alberta. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would think so. We were never like that. You get them in the house and hope the other guy misses, and you put in another one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not anywhere near like today.
Well, or even how about when you came to Manitoba? So what brought you to Winnipeg? What was the start of that?
I transferred for Polo Park Open. They were short of Winnipeg bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And the personnel manager from the Eaton store, took a Western trip and looked at, I guess, profiles of some employees. There was two of us out of Regina. Actually, I was in Moose Jaw at that time. There was two of us out of Moose Jaw that went to Polo Park before it opened, about a year or two before it opened. So that's how I got to Winnipeg. And then the first round manager for the Western Division, which at that time he was in charge of, he wanted to curl. And he knew I curled. And he wanted to play on my team. That's maybe one of the reasons why he brought me to Winnipeg. I don't know.
So it actually helped. It probably helped on your resume, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it probably did.
Yeah. Did you end up playing with him?
No, he played with me.
Oh, he played. Yeah, so he did curl with you. So he was based in Winnipeg, and okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. For a couple of years.
Was it hard to get rid of him when you realized he wasn't a good player?
He wasn't all that bad.
Yeah.
He was a gung-ho young guy, good athlete, well built and stuff. So, he fit right in. But he loved the sport and he tried hard.
Yeah. Did you make your way to Assiniboine? Was that your first location then in Winnipeg, or you were somewhere else at the time when you first moved?
When I first came to Winnipeg, the Eaton company had their own curling club on Mayfair Avenue.
So it was an Eaton's owned club?
Yeah.
Oh,
it was their own club. But that year you had a big, huge storm in the spring, and the roof caved in. So I never got to curl in the Eaton Curling Club. So what they did is they rented ice at the Highlander.
Okay.
At that time. So that's where we curled. The old Highlander. And we curled there for years.
So how old have you been at that point?
I'd be 30-ish, 29.
So you'd already sort of developed your game by that point. So had you already been skipping in Saskatchewan before you left?
Oh, yeah. Although I had my own team, but I was also, I curled quite a few years with my dad. So.
Was he disappointed to see you leave then when you moved to Manitoba?
Oh, no, he was quite happy. I think he wanted to get rid of me, maybe.
He didn't have the heart to tell you he was looking for another player. Yeah.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Just one more little point.
Yeah.
I curled with Jim Pettipe in Moose Jaw, in a Moose Jaw Bonspiel. Just a point. We didn't win the Bonspiel, but
well, just on that, Colonel. So who else was kind of big in Saskatchewan around the time then? Who were the sort of the contemporaings and the teams you went up against? Just in your late 20s.
I'll tell you, there was you might remember the guy who had the big famous back swing, Pee Wee Pickering.
Yeah.
And, of course, there were the Richardsons and the Campbell brothers were from Avonlea. They were great curlers. Brothers, and they made their own little curling ring. They were farmers. They were a good team. But
well, let me touch on that. So you said they would practice. Like, what did a lot of teams practice a lot, or was it such a social environment still, even at the competitive levels? Or did you see that some teams were more focused than others?
Before I left, they started to become more focused on curling. But the Avonlea boys, the Campbells, they like I said, they were farmers. So what were they doing in the winter? I don't know. They built one or two sheeter, and of course they could throw in practice. But they're doing a lot of practicing. A lot of difference because we were just playing hit and run, right?
Yeah.
That's good of Saskatchewan. So now we're in Winnipeg, and we're curling out of Strathmore.
Quick, I want to take another step back before we get to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
You have an infamous nickname as the Colonel, which is clearly in reference to Colonel Klinck, who's the character in Hogan's Heroes. Do you remember when that first name came about and who coined it?
Yeah, I do. There was in those days we always had traveling salesmen for representing their companies, right? They would travel out west, and there was a lot of that. So there was a lot of salesmen going through every province. I was in Regina. I had the ladies department that I was in charge of, and this little guy salesman who would sell to my co-worker would come about 4 times a year, and he's just a short little guy, but he's just a comedian. And he came in one day. He knew my last name was Klinck because of association with the person he was doing business with. So we would chit chat, and he would ask. And one day he come walking, and he goes, "You got to be the Colonel." Well, why is that? Well, don't you watch that Hogan's Hero show on TV? And I said, I don't spend too much time watching TV, but so ever since then, of course, I started to watch it. So that's where I got the name from, and it's stuck.
Yeah.
From then on. So I would be 30-ish, 1 or 2, something there, maybe 35.
So you've been fine with it then? It wasn't something that you tried to discourage at the time?
Oh, hell no. I thought it was just as funny as everybody else. So I didn't mind.
And in Winnipeg, there weren't any other Klincks, I guess, to compete with.
Well, actually, surprisingly enough, I didn't think there was any, but one day, after we had won a
So there's a few.
But
yeah.
no relation and spelled the name same.
So when did you take on the Big O? When did this happen?
Well, this is really funny because every curling club had so many representatives from their curling club to play in the city playdown.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have anymore, right? You always had a city playdown, and that winner would get into the winner of that little group would get into the city playdown, and they would play off to see who got into the provincial finals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that worked. Every curling club had at least one representative. So Eaton, not being a very competitive club to begin with, it was more social. They had at least one rep, or maybe a couple, but anyway, we were one of them. So it's a big deal into the city, and then it's a big deal thing because you have a playoff and you get 5 reps into provincial, whatever, however many they had at that time. There's probably more than that. So here's the team from Eaton, which also the personnel manager was on this team. We go out to play the Big O. It's in 12-ender. I don't think anybody from the Eaton company has ever won a game in the group playdowns.
Mm-hmm.
We go out to play the Big O in his glory and hair and whatever. And for some reason or other, we're on a sheet of pretty tricky ice, which shouldn't be any problem for the Big O. But anyway, we can't imagine, like, they're going to kill us. Like, 6 ends will be shaking hands and we'll have to make a beer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how the game went along. Anyway, we get into about the 10th end, steal a point, and we're still playing.
Let's remind everybody with 2 ends to go.
With 2 ends to go. We're still playing 12. That's right. So, I don't know what's going on, because I don't know the Big O from anybody or anything, because I'm new to Manitoba, and in Winnipeg, it doesn't mean a thing to me. Anyway, we go back and we play the 11th end. Or if he's got a wide open hit for, I don't know, maybe 5, don't matter. What he's got to do is just kiss it somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
for sure the gloves are coming off, right? Doesn't have to knock it out, I don't think. I guess he's a little frustrated by this time, playing the team from Eaton. For God's sake, we should be out of here by this time. Anyway, he misses, so that ties it.
Mm-hmm.
We were 1 down, I guess, after the 10th. We were going to play the 11th, and he misses wide open hits. Now we're coming home on the 12th. Honest to God, as far as I can remember, we had that 4-foot so tied up, I don't think he could have carried it down.
Mm-hmm.
And put it in the right place to get shot rock. We had about 4 rock guarding the 4-foot, some in the 4-foot. It was just unbelievable. So anyway, he's going to throw a draw. Throws it, it hits the backboard.
Mm-hmm.
They lose. We win. So they shake hands, and of course his team is totally upset because, you know, they should have kicked their ass in about 6 ends.
Mm-hmm.
Off the ice, they go with their grumbling and mumbling, complaining to be hell. So we get in the car, we're going home, and the boys turn on the news. The sportscast is coming on, and guys like Bob Picker or somebody's reading the sports, and the Big O against the Colonel, and Colonel 10, the Big O 9? Oh, must be. Nobody would believe it.
With that intonation in his voice, yeah.
Well, I don't know. That's so far back. That must have been a mistake. I've got to check this out.
With that, so what year? Do you recall what year that would have been? Like after his World Championship or beforehand?
71. Because I just come to Winnipeg. Well, I didn't know anybody. I mean,
just before he won the Brier, then probably just maybe even just the year before.
Well,
maybe.
He went in 90. He went in 91. This is we're talking 71 here.
Yeah. No. He won in 72, right? And then
really?
the famous famous Labonte curse in 72.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right then. Well, it would have been somewhere before that.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
In the Duguid era, the early 70s.
Because from then I went eventually and joined the Assiniboine. They built their 8 cheaters. The 4 cheaters burned down.
Oh, okay. Okay, so they had the fire. Okay.
Yeah, they had the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So it had been somewhere around there. So anyway, the next day I go to work, and we had split shifts. So I didn't have to go to work till like 1 o'clock or something. So I go in at 1 o'clock, and geez, everybody's coming down to congratulate me. Well, for what? Well, you know, you beat the Big O. I mean, so he made me famous. Along with the Colonel, the guy that named me the Colonel, and Oris Malachuk. He made me famous.
Yeah.
And a 1-game shot.
I was going to say, so you won the 1 game, but you haven't said what happened after that.
Well, so then we thought, geez, maybe we got a pretty good team here, because I don't know. So we all went out and bought 4 blue sweaters. Matching sweaters, because we didn't have any matching sweaters. We're not that good.
You're from Eaton's and you couldn't get matching sweaters?
Eh?
You're from Eaton's and they couldn't give you matching sweaters?
We weren't that good. Yeah, pay attention.
They didn't.
No, we bought our own. You know, well, they're $20 or something by that time.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal. that was awesome next week. But we felt pretty good with ourselves for a couple of days. And that was it. So then when I moved over to Assiniboine, I had to work my way in there because they were full. I finally got in there for about a year, and I finally got my own team together, and away we went.
And started at that point. So at this point now, you're kind of into your 30s. So would that have been considered, I mean, back in that era, when did you see most guys be more competitive? Was it more once you sort of reached your 30s, or, you see today a lot of the teams are a lot younger, and especially the front ends. What was it like back then? Were you joining with younger players, or mostly guys your age?
No, most of the guys my age, around my age. Yeah. Curling didn't seem to be huge at that time. I mean, there wasn't as many, I don't think, young kids as there were, say, maybe 10 years after that, where curling clubs started to have junior programs. But we got 4 guys around my age, and we got together and we curled really well. When
you first came to Winnipeg, did you play in your first MCA that first year when you went? Or?
Oh, yeah. Thing was, I was in 71. Pettipiece was already in Winnipeg, and I knew Dale, I knew Hunter. Woody couldn't take any time off work. I've been in the MCA maybe once before that. Anyway, Woody couldn't curl, and Pettipiece come along one day and said, "Hey, you got a team to field, so why don't you maybe drop that team, and we could use it to play lead for us." So, I mean, Duguid at that time, I mean, he's the king of the castle. So I said, well, check with my team, and I said, you guys mind if I go? And they said, oh, hell no. We weren't going to do anything anyway, probably. We'd get our 8 games and go home, but no, you go ahead. So, 1971, played lead, and we won the Birks, which was one of the majors. And then, in 1974, as a skip, I won the Birks team.
Was it the same team from 3 years before that figured they wouldn't do very well, or at this point it was a bit of a change? Yeah.
No. It was a change. A big change.
So we're getting into the mid-70s now. So what was the Bonspiel circuit like? Now, you talked a bit about playing on those small natural ice rinks around Saskatchewan. So at this point now, you're in Winnipeg, mid-70s. There is a growth in the game, I think, at this point. It seems like, in terms. And you talked about how the juniors started to develop, and there was more and more teams. So what was the Bonspiel circuit like? Did you try to play a lot, or did you have to balance work and curling, or how did you do that?
Yeah, you had to balance that too. We didn't really travel that much out of town to Littlefield. Our favorite was going out to Stonewall and Balmoral. Yes, it's a 20-minute drive and a 25-minute drive, and we took in a lot of those Littlefield. And that was mostly for fun. It's not that you're going to win any big prize.
At that point, when you're skipping, you're at the Assiniboine, you've managed to find a team, you're playing competitively. Did you have Purple Heart aspirations at that point? What was if you were thinking about where you wanted to get in curling, was it largely, this is something to do socially during the winter and I want to have fun at it and see where we go? Or were you really thinking, I've got a Purple Heart on my mind?
Never so much a Purple Heart, but you'd always think about, okay, we got to get to the provincial playdown. That was the big thing, is to get into, because it was always good if you could do that. We only did a few times, but we had some pretty good runs when we did get there. But then from Dam 70, I mean, it took us to a different team, to 85. Well, we won the Hydro in 80.
So here's even before we get to 85. So you're at the Assiniboine as a young Burtnick Olsen team is developing. Well, and even just before that, you had the Tomset team. At some point, did you start to look at it and go, maybe it's already past my, the game's already passed me by?
I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think so. No, not yet. No, not yet.
Yeah.
You kept thinking, the big thing was to try to get to the provincial, and how that turned out.
Yeah.
The big thing for us, because we're just average Joes, average working, and we don't do a lot of practice. And the team that's...
Wait, hold on, I'm going to clarify. When you mean we don't do a lot of practice, did you do any practice?
Yeah, okay. You might go do something by yourself, but... No, you hardly went and spent a lot of time sewing on. Sure.
Yeah.
And with that Assiniboine ice, you learned how to sew against the turn and that kind of thing. When the ice did shift, you didn't have a cement floor. Ice shifted in the winter. You had to know how to read that ice.
Oh, okay. Well, hold on. So what was, I didn't realize that. Like, I always remember the stories about the weather, the temperature. I had heard stories about, how the creek behind the club would have an impact. But so what's that about the center floor? So what was the history of it?
Well,
some of the issues?
Well, because we don't have a cement floor, like a lot of rinks had a cement floor. And when they built our curling club, at that time, I guess, not enough money around, and they didn't put in a cement floor when they went to the 8 sheets.
Mm-hmm.
They just kept it a sand. So when the frost started to affect the beneath of the curling club, because it would affect it a little bit from cold, that it would shift the ice just slightly. But as much as the ice makers tried to keep it straight, to keep it level, you couldn't always do that.
Mm-hmm.
And there'd be times where the ice would shift a little bit, so you go to the curl, you had to pay attention. You couldn't just put the broom down and the guy would look up and, oh yeah, it's an intern, so an intern. But you put the broom down, indicating an intern, and he's looking at you because it's on the wrong side of the rock. No, I should be showing an outturn down there, shouldn't I? And the guy say, no. Mm-hmm. You throw the in, and it's going to drift down there, and it'll drift right back and hit a rock.
Would that ice even adjust day to day or even draw to draw? Like how dramatic was it?
Every time they put a flood on it, it would change a little bit. It wouldn't be the same all the time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we curled, I think there was a Civic Caledonian curling club named, they had 5 sheets.
Yep.
There was a sheet one for sure. If you put a rock on a certain spot in the house, somewhere close to 4 foot, but maybe still in the 8, you could not hit it. The only way you could hit it is if you're making a double.
Uh-huh.
You made the double and it came across and hit it. You could throw whatever you wanted. You could throw a rocket. You could throw a draw, a tap. You could not hit it if they ever got it on that spot.
And this was just...
and we tried.
Always that way. So like it never shifted and moved around. That was just consistently the way that one sheet was for many years.
Yeah, that one sheet, I don't know how long it was, because we didn't curl there that often. But
yeah.
Because we always go there in the Bonspiel time, but you couldn't hit a rock. You couldn't hit one rock.
Do you think that the constant shifting of the ice at Assiniboine made a lot of the teams there even more competitive? Because I think that was talked about at times, that if you could skip there, you could play anywhere.
Yeah. That's basically what we thought.
Mm-hmm.
You could curl anywhere. You could read the ice at Assiniboine, you could read ice just about anywhere you went.
So do you think after your many years there, did you ever figure it out?
Oh, well, yeah, you could figure it out.
Yeah.
You could figure it out, but you had to be aware of it, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody could eventually figure it out. Especially the teams who were playing like in the ABC group or something who were relatively competitive. I mean, they all knew. So you could figure it out. But.
And they used to bet. So back in, I don't know if it started where it started in the 70s, or I remember in the early 80s, they had that big Canadian Airlines Bonspiel, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was.
And they had that at Assiniboine. That was a pretty big event. So was there an advantage for the home teams in that?
No, because all these other teams that come, they're totally competitive. I mean, they're not, you don't spend whatever, a couple of $1,000 or whatever, take your team in just to check out the ice. They were competitive girls, very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about that. And they were picking up on it.
Yeah.
And any good competitive girl was skipping third guy. I mean, you'd catch on to that.
Well, on that, so you ended up, was it always a plan that you wanted to skip? What was your evolution as a player? Was it you just really want to avoid sweeping, or what ended up happening with that?
Yeah. That's why I had that fat belly, is I couldn't sweep. And they still say I can't sweep, so there you go. All my life, you go skip, you can't sweep. So I did. So they either put up with me or we went on our way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the funny story is we starting with Gordy Cook, another just a great guy. So we entered the team into the Bonspiel and big MCA, the year we won the berth, 1974, and we're short one body. So we were great put around because, we got to have a lead man. So anyway, it turns out somebody recommended this guy. So we phoned him one day, say, listen, we need a curler for the Bonspiel. You interested? He goes, yeah. Okay, so we don't know what he looks like, who he is.
Mm-hmm.
All we know is that he can curl, and we need a body and a sweeper, right? So we just got finished the Assiniboine in Calcutta, because every curling club those days had a Calcutta. So we always thought we'd like to buy our own team because it gives us more incentives to maybe win. So we bought our own team. It cost us like $400 to buy ourselves. There's only 3 of us, so we say, well, if the new guy we're going to go pick up on Finn, okay, fine. Otherwise, play with the Calcutta money with the 3 of us and divvy it up.
Mm-hmm.
Guy gets in the car. Hi, Dennis. How are you doing? Oh, fine. So we're driving to the first game. We go, so by the way, Dennis, we have the Calcutta. We bought our team. Are you interested? He goes, oh, shit, yeah. How much do we have? $100. Okay. Just $100 and away we go. So we play Bonspiel. So we have a party at Gordy Cook's house, and the Dennis McMahon comes out with a sheet of paper. I think it was 17 games we played.
Mm-hmm.
Lost one somewhere. He had kept score of every shot, every end of every game, and told us what kind of percentage we had for every game, the name of the guy we played against, and the score, and the total percentage of what we shot when it was all finished.
Mm-hmm.
It was like an accountant. He was actually a druggist.
Okay.
And we didn't even know he was keeping score.
But he was doing it while he was playing.
While he was playing. He had a little piece of paper on his room or somewhere, and he would sit down on the bench and write down, okay, he made that shot, so it's a two-pointer, or when he made it half a shot, so it's the one. This whole thing, 17 games, we never knew. So he brought this sheet out.
Mm-hmm.
Funny, eh?
And what happened to Dennis? Was that the last time you played with him, or?
No, we played with him a couple of years, and then, we kind of got going different directions again, and a couple of new guys, and changed teams, and my team from 85 was completely different.
So how much did your $400 investment net you? Do you remember the returns on that?
Yeah, we won 90% of the Calcutta, Assiniboine Calcutta. I don't know how much we got out of that, but we won 90% of it. The only reason we didn't win the whole thing is because we lost one game. So there was also 10%. The team lost almost 10. So I can't remember the amount.
The amount was it the most you'd ever won in curling up to that point, or I'm wondering
sure.
It was more than those stoves, than those electric stoves.
Well, I wasn't with my dad when that happened.
Oh, okay.
No.
But it was still a pretty good return, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was a good return, and we, of course, we all laughed and joked. And the year after that, they cut that out. You could only win one of, instead of all of.
Okay, so it was the Colonel rule.
Well, I don't know what they called it, but anyway.
Yeah.
But they changed that the year after, which it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't care because we caught it all.
When I met you and I met your boys, the three sons and all that, through various sports, curling of course being one of them, but baseball and that. So that was right around at that point, kind of 82, 83. So how old were you at the time then? What was that men's team like? You guys were.
So if we're into 1980, we won the Hydro that year, as a matter of fact. But anyway, we're into 1980. I'm 40 years old.
Looking at the early 80s, so before we get to 85.
Yeah.
When you had that great run, had you seen anything from 80 to 84 that made you think, oh, okay, this is a Purple Heart team and we're odds-on favorites or anything like that, or no? It was just
no. We were just four guys playing and having fun, and whatever happened.
But you played together at that point. Was that nucleus? That team had been together for a while.
Yeah, when we did, I think in 1976 or somewhere there, we had a different team than the one we won the Birks.
Okay, so who is it? Just so everybody knows, who was the team then? So we got Colonel Klinck skipping.
So we had Bobby Smith was playing third, and Dwight Adams was playing second.
Yeah,
Dale Gould.
Mm-hmm. So that team so that's the team. The nucleus of that team started late 70s or kind of 76, 77.
Oh no, it'll be after the Birks thing. So it'll be very late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just four guys. You'd play like a handful of Bonspiels a year around town. You'd go and play downs every year.
Not very many.
Yeah.
Yeah, not very many.
Oh, not even. Okay, so you didn't even play that much in the Bonspiel circuit, and then you.
And only the surrounding fields were just these little towns.
Mm-hmm. And you'd play out of the club. And the other thing is you had to win out of the club just to get into the cities at that point. Now, at that point, though, had your team in the early 80s, were you usually getting out of the club? You were playing in the zones?
Well, it was pretty hard getting out of that, too.
It was a pretty tough club, from what I recall.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it wasn't. I don't know how many times we did get out, but I mean, it wasn't all that easy.
Mm-hmm.
No, it wasn't. No. I don't know how many times we did, but somebody else might remember, but I don't. But,
so when you get to the provincials in 85, so what had been your previous trip to the provincials?
We might have played 3 years. I don't think we played 4 in the provincial.
Mm-hmm.
We only played about 3 altogether, which 85 would have been one of them. Yeah. So we didn't make the provincials that often.
Well, I remember you made it in 85 and then you made it in 86. You had your run in 85. So really the nucleus, that team hadn't been in provincials before, or would maybe
no, it might have been. We might have been in 84. I don't have any record of that or back of that, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So you're going. So it's a double knockout, 32 team, as it was, back then. Still 32 teams today, but it's kind of a weird, different structure with multiple levels. But double knockout, you get into that 85 event, and you have no aspirations. You're excited to be there. It's obviously a great event to be a part of. You're probably at that point, are you a bit of the older teams at the event, or you guys kind of an elder statesman at that point?
Not necessarily. Kerry Burknick was there, and Bubs, and...
But at that point, you're 45, and a lot of these guys are in their 30s, right? So...
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And maybe a few older.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing about that is there were two teams from Assiniboine in the provincial.
Mm-hmm.
Playdown. Kerry Burknick and us.
Mm-hmm.
Kerry Burknick was the number 1 seed. We were number 32.
You were 32. Because, they would seed the teams.
The
1 through 32, they would seed them all. So, does that mean your very first game in the provincials was against Kerry?
It would have been.
Yeah.
But the powers to be, who are running the provincial, said, well, we can't have two Assiniboine teams playing each other the first game, so let's move Klinck and he can go play Peters, who was the number 2 seed. So they moved us from playing Kerry to the bottom of the draw against Vic Peters.
And Vic at this point probably he wasn't complaining, was he? He didn't have much concern?
Well, I was playing number 32 team, what do you want?
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly when they did it. I mean, the draw, they hadn't printed the draw yet, so it wasn't that they changed it after the draw.
Mm-hmm.
They just said, well, here's 2 teams from the Assiniboine, so he's probably number 32, so let's put him on the bottom, and he can play number 2 seed.
Sure.
So that's how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Then our first game was against George Peters in the big old ice arena, the hockey arena, and we caught them off guard and beat them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peters played his next game again, and he lost it. So before the banquet started, number 2 seed was going home.
Yeah. Now at that point, because you played all the way along the A side first, right? Is that how it worked? Or did you play both sides? I can't recall.
Yeah, you play both sides. They got to about the 4s, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then at what point did you're getting on a roll, you're winning, you beat Vic in the first game, so you're probably feeling pretty good about it. But at what point through that run did you start to feel like you had a shot at this?
When we started out, our team, when we driving to Dauphin, we said, we just don't want to get blown out of any one game, so let's just try to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it from getting out of hand, and let's just go at least have 2 games. We made it to the provincial. Let's just go have 2 games. Of course, we won the first one. We thought, holy shit, this is going to be fun. Mm-hmm. And that's all we thought about the whole thing. We never really thought that we were going to end up being the winners. And even though we were in the finals on both sides, we were still having what we thought was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we were enjoying it, and Dauphin fans were absolutely going, they liked us for some reason or other.
Yeah.
And I think the guy who bought us in the Calcutta paid about $100 because somebody had to buy somebody, right? So they threw in $100 at our team. Of course, they bought some others as well. So the guys who bought us in the Calcutta, every time we won a game or two, they were jumping up and down for joy. So when we finally got booted out, I guess. Anyway. I
think you probably would have been playing, I think it was at Saturday night. They used to have the A final.
Saturday night, and if we'd have won that and beat Bob Sunday morning, then it was all over.
Yeah.
But because we lost, they had to have a final game Sunday night.
Well, how did it work out? I think I'm trying to recall. You were playing Bubs on.
We played Bubs on Sunday. We played guys from Ron
McMillan. Ron McMillan. Yeah.
And we had already beaten him once.
Mm-hmm.
We beat him 6-0.
Yeah.
They quit on the one side. They said, "The hell with this. Let's get rid of this game." And then we had to play them again on Saturday night, and I screwed up, missed a bad shot on going away in, and they eventually beat us.
Mm-hmm.
So then they won the A side. But we never, if we'd have won one of those sides, we might have thought, what the hell? I think we're going to go to the Brier for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just 4 guys having fun. Really.
At some point, did it start to sink in, and did that actually change the dynamic in the team? Or was it always, hey, we'll just do as good as we can and we're having a good time and let's not mess with it?
Yeah, that's right.
Because I think you said famously, there was the article, I still remember the article in the paper, you were quoted, and I don't know how the direct quote was, but something to the effect of, we were having a good time all the way here and we started to get serious and maybe we shouldn't have got so serious. Or were you just, do you remember the quote? I don't know if you remember the exact.
No, I don't remember the quote either, but, but I probably had a smile on my face when I was saying it, so I don't know.
Or I said to the effect of, we shouldn't have stopped drinking or something like that. To that effect.
Well, that could have been too. Because we always had a couple of pops after every game. Because the Labatt boys were, I had a good friend there, this Cal Shoot was Labatt rep, and he was looking after us pretty good.
So at some point, did you guys say, we better get serious here, we got to slow down on our consumption?
No, we didn't get stupid. We just had a couple of beers. But it was always enjoyable to have a couple after every win, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all we did. We didn't get right at it, and I don't think we gave it any serious thought that here we are in the final and we're going to the Brier if we win it. Personally, I'm not sure we would have done very well. Like I said, we're 4 guys having fun, and we just happened to hit it lucky for 1 week, right? So the next week or 2 weeks later, whenever the Brier is, now you go against every other provincial team. God knows you get your ass kicked every time you step on the ice.
Yeah. I would have been a hell of a story. I mean, it was still a great story as it was, given that you were the 32nd ranked team. I don't know too many other teams that were ranked 32nd that made it that far. I'm sure we could go back and look, but probably none. If I recall, the next year you guys again had a limited schedule. Still a bunch of middle-aged guys curling for enjoyment, and you pretty easily made it through the city zones. I don't know if at that point teams were scared of you or not.
Probably not, but anyway, we did make it, but we didn't go very far, I don't think. Yeah. The only thing we did after that is we won Fleming Peddler in 1989.
Mm-hmm. Same squad, though?
Yeah, very well.
So that loss in 85 didn't have any lasting effects on the dynamics of the team? Everybody stayed together?
Oh, yeah, we didn't. Yeah, we were happy we went as far as we did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when we won the Birks in '74, we were also in a minor final as well, which they had postponed that until the next day. And I don't think they've ever had to postpone the MCA Bonspiel for another day before they could declare who the aggregate
champion was. Okay.
So we had to play the next day. We lost to a guy by the name of Hume. I think it was Bill Hume. I'm not sure. And all I had to do was make a draw to the house and maybe as a 4-foot coming home, and I put it in the hack. So I think we were just tired and glad to get off the ice.
Kind of hard to blame the sweepers sometimes on those too, right?
Well, I don't think they touch it. I think I just threw it too hard.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. If they don't touch it and it makes it to the hack, you can't really look at them funny.
No, you can't. Yeah. No, that's for sure. So, anyway.
Yeah. So you kept the team intact, and then at some point you must have made your way into seniors, right? Did you...
Yeah. Well, we played out of the Heather for a couple of years. We won the Heather Masters 1 year. We won the Chicken Chef, I think, in 2004. I think I put that down here. And then that was it. We played, but we're not competitive anymore. I wasn't curling that well anymore anyway. So I think I played 2010. We played the Hydro final against Wayne Nowasco. And we were tied coming home, and he beat us. And that was the last. 2010 was my last.
Yeah. Well, I think, you mentioned to me that you weren't interested in moving to a stick, because at some point you just felt like that wasn't something you were interested in.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm still not.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had the Fit Binders were curling with the Blondes, who were an excellent team. The Blondes always beat us. Every time we played against them, no matter what it was in, they would beat us.
Oh, was he your nemesis somehow through the years? Was the DeBlonde brothers?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he would always beat me. Jimmy Urso would beat me. Kerry Brookneck would always beat me. We had some good games with Brian Penston. We won the big one in the Bonspiel. Barry Fry would usually come up and beat me, particularly in some of the mixed Bonspiel. He would always win the mixed. Ron Westcott
was there anyone you had their number? Like Orist as an example after that big win?
No, not really. We used to beat Ron Westcott once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But we shake his head and couldn't figure that out. And Howie Restall was another one that we just seemed to be able to beat. He's another, I don't know, mental thing, I guess, with him. I don't know. We always had good games with him, but we always beat him. But the thing with the Blondes, who would always beat us, we're playing a good, and this is the final, the Birks final in 74. We're playing a good game, except they got us tied up on the ropes here on the one end. It could have been a far away end, I'm not even sure. We're up in the game by a couple points, but they're going to score 2-3 or whatever, right? So that's going to kill us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they got the forefoot all tied up. Can't get in with the draw or whatever. And we got two rocks, or somebody's got two rocks, sitting just ahead of the tee line on an outside board, 12 foot somewhere. And so listen, our only chance is to hit this one out here, hope like hell it rolls into a 4 foot, because, that's all we got. We can't, you can't even throw a rocket down to try to clear something, because we're not going to clear it. We only got two rocks left. So we, let's go down and throw this bullet. Well, not a bullet. I could never throw that one that fast. Anyway, we hit that rock on the outside of the board. It rolls right over into the 4 foot.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Blondes are saying, lucky bastard, how can you do that? And they go down and they try to do something. I don't know what they do, but they don't get what they want. So we look at the other side of the sheet. Sure enough, there's a rock sitting about the same spot. Let's fire one down at it. See if we get the same roll. Sure as shit, we fire it down there, hit it right, rolls to the 4 foot. Now we're laying the Duke. They say that's it, gloves off. Shook hands and we won the Birks.
And that was it, yeah.
One of the Think binders will never forget it. If he sees me at the airport a couple years ago, you're lucky bugger. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about.
So in other words, he carries with that to this day. He still remembers that game.
Oh, yeah. Well, they do it a bit of a joke, because they would always beat us, eh?
Yeah.
They would always beat us.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, one of my worst 12-inning games,
we're
playing to get into the city, out of the city, the provincial 12-inning game. We were after about 6 or 7 ends. We're, 4 or 5 points up, no problem. The guys are going to shake hands, except they steal a couple points, maybe on the 8th. They're fine. So they're going to play another end just to see. And we should be off the ice. But I'm all of a sudden starting to miss. If I throw one down on the far end, about the 9th end, we score 5. No, I miss it. I miss his rock, so they steal some more.
Mm-hmm.
So now we go back on the 10th. Geez, now we steal no one. So instead of us being in the locker room having a beer or coffee, they're playing 2 more ends. And I'm not curling very well. I'm not hitting anything. I mean, my team has got rocks all over the place, but I can't hit one to get theirs out and shake hands. I said to myself, I'm going to have to play 12 friggin' ends when a game we should be in the locker room.
Mm-hmm. I'm
going to have to draw the bloody 4 foot to win. Wouldn't you know it? I could have scored about 4 or 5 on the 11th end. I miss again. They take one to tie. I have to hit the 4 foot to win. They do. But I should never go. So that was one of my worst games, but we ended up winning it.
Yeah.
How bad is that?
Yeah. So in other words, the most devastating game that you remember was not so much a loss; it's more a win that you just should have got off the ice earlier.
Absolutely, should have got off their 6 ends. The other team wanted to quit. Unbelievable. We had to go 12, and I had to draw the 4 to win.
Yeah.
And I had made a draw because I'm shooting hits. Yeah. Gary Ross, he always beat me too.
What's that?
Yeah, Gary Ross could always beat me.
Oh, Gary Ross, yeah.
He could, the bridesmaid.
Mm-hmm.
He could always beat me.
I've only really heard the stories. That was kind of before my time, but I can't think of anything more devastating. I mean, Mike McEwen actually came close, finally got out last year, but to lose that provincial final that many times seems. I mean, did everybody feel for him? I mean, at some point, I'm sure even the teams that were beating him felt bad.
Oh yeah, everybody did after the 3rd or 4th time, or the 5th time, whatever it was. I think he went 5 times. I don't know. Yeah,
I think it was 5, and I think some of them were devastating losses too, weren't they? I mean, some of them were dramatic.
And yeah, they were. And you know how you got to walk sort of like in past the tee line toward the back of the house, and all you got to do is just make a draw to the 4 because you've been making them all day, and you throw it a little bit heavy to make sure that you're going to get it there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was thought maybe the one I remember. You remember he threw it too hard or something? Didn't hit the rock at the back either.
Mm-hmm.
Went too far. Oh yeah.
Was that one of the early ones that he lost?
No, I think it was later on.
It was later on. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I got to make sure I'm there, so I'll make sure I got enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And either it curls by, or it doesn't curl enough, and it just sits by on one side or something. So that's what the red-headed guy that curled out of the Heather Curling Club, Doug Harrison. Harrison.
Yeah.
But it was, we were at the Selkirk Arena. We watched him play. He's in the final. I forget who it was. Maybe Peters, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And last rock, all Doug's got to do is hit, maybe a big bite of the 12 or it's a simple draw.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rock goal, and he yells and screams at his team all the way down. Hard. Ends up just outside the ring. Peter steals one 12-footer.
I was trying to remember Mark Franklin. Didn't Mark Franklin also have an experience in a provincial, like a devastating provincial experience?
Yeah, against Rod Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
In a provincial, I think Rod Hunter took him to maybe either 10 or 12, whichever. Rod never quit.
Mm-hmm.
He was 3 down, and it wasn't Mark Franklin. He was 3 down coming home, and I don't know. I'm not even sure who had last rock, and I think Hunter scored 4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it went because they got it on a high spot or something.
Mm-hmm.
And Franklin's team missed everything they threw at it. I think I was listening to it on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, yeah, that was devastating for Franklin.
So in '85, you didn't have the same lingering feeling. So when you got that close, you can't look back at it and say, in one of those 2 games, a shot here or a shot there, it really wasn't a case of a miracle save by your opponent that lost you the game or anything like that.
No, we had, I tell you, like I said, when we started out on the drive down, we said, let's just try to curl our best and not get blown out of any one game.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get blown out in there either. I should have beat Bubs.
Yeah.
My disappointment was I didn't get a silver tray.
That you didn't which?
So something didn't get a silver tray at least.
Mm-hmm.
You go to both finals, the loser gets a silver tray, right, in the final.
Mm-hmm.
So we should have beat Bubs in the game we played against them. I missed an intern draw that was short, and I hit a guard, and he scored 2 to go 2 up after 9.
Mm-hmm.
If I make that intern draw around the guard and come up to Bubs' rock, so he can't get it out, he's got to score 1. We could be 1 down coming home with.
Mm-hmm.
As it turned out, I chipped the guard, and I didn't get second shot, and he drew for 2. He was 2 up coming home.
Mm-hmm.
But we could have been.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
So listen, we were 4 guys. We just wanted to go and didn't want to get blown out of any one game. We wanted to have a good time, and we had a great time. And that was that's all I could tell you.
Yeah.
We had a great time, and we had a lot of fun, and we were just happy to be there.
Why'd you leave the Assiniboine? I didn't realize you went to the Heather. I thought that would be blasphemy for you to leave the Masters.
No, just in the Masters League.
Oh, just later on in the league.
In the Masters League. So, no, we still curled out of the Assiniboine, but we, in the men's league.
Mm-hmm.
But we went to, because they had a good Masters League. So.
You're like one of the statues they would put up at the Assiniboine when they start putting statues up, right? I mean...
Well, if I'd have won something, they might have been. Who knows?
You won the Calcutta in 74.
Oh, yeah, that was good. They got, I forget what the money was, but they got my president's pick.
You might have to pay for your own statue, but I mean, you could probably get it up if you want it.
Well, I would. You're right, Kev, you're right.
After our conversation, the Colonel remembered something that he wanted to share about his hotel experience or motel experience during the Dauphin Provincials in '85. And I also got a chance to ask him a question about playing the Deblons and how they were known notoriously for their slow pace of play. And here is that conversation. So your memory banks must have been working then. So what do you recall?
Well, the funny thing is, back in those days, you had to win a city zone, which would give you a zone spot through your city playdown, which would give you a provincial spot. So, you had to go through your curling club, and then you had to... if you won that, then you had to play down with 8 or 9 rinks to see if you could win your provincial spot. And we had about, I think out of Winnipeg, we might have had about 5 or 6 provincial spots in those days. Because you also had 8 that came out of the Bonspiel, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
And this was prior to the Bonspiel. So we were lucky. We got to win provincial spots and one of those city zone spots. So anyway, so the fact that we know that we're going to Dauphin, not a big city, and, hotel reservations and that kind of thing are quite limited because the MCA, they know they're going there as well, and they're in Sean, so they'll all be taking up the good hotel spots, right? As per usual, because that's what they would do, because they know where they're going, and however many dignitaries and sportscasters or whatever, I mean, they're all grabbing whatever good spots they can. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, the MCA, they also have to probably provide each rink that goes there 2 rooms, just guessing, because you can double up with the guys, right? So each rink would be, they'll assign you a room somewhere. Because we won our spot early, and I don't know, I must have had a friend of mine who must have known what the hotel situation was in Dauphin anyway. Somebody, it could have been me, made a reservation for the time that the playdowns are on in Dauphin. So, I mean, now you go through Christmas, and you go through the MCA, and you get a whole bunch of stuff, and then now it's time to head for Dauphin. So it's the Wednesday before the playdown starts, and my buddy and I, we were together, and maybe one of my friends came with us. Up we go, and the first thing you got to do is you got to register with the MCA so you know that you were there, mm-hmm. and they give you a half an hour of practice time. So you go to the main hotel, whichever it was, and you go and register, and being a number 2 seed out of 32 teams, you can imagine what kind of room they might give us, right? Go to take a look at this room, and when you know it, we got a room above one of the bars in one of the hotels, and there's barely enough room for 2 people. Mm-hmm. And we also had, because one of the wives was with us, we also had to have a cot. So the beds were so small, I guess, but we had to wheel in a cot. Well, we could hardly get room for a cot in this room. So the room is the shits, right? Basically. I mean, but at least, it's a room, and you got to stay somewhere. So you take what they give you, and you don't complain to anybody, because there's no sense, because there's just no space. Poor old Dauphin, I mean, they're bulging at the seams, mm-hmm. trying to get people for rooms. So where the big guys and the number 1 shooter stayed, I have no idea, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so now the competition starts Thursday. My friend who had come up with us, he had booked a room at a motel just either on the outskirts of Dauphin or just on the inside of city limits. Can't remember. So we all kind of congregate at his room, and we sit around and we have, a pop or 2 and talk, and we bitch and complain about our room and whatever. But at least it's warm and it's a roof over your head. So I said, well, listen, why don't I just walk across the parking lot here and ask this guy if he for sure hasn't got, like 4 rooms or a couple rooms or whatever. Mm-hmm. I walked across there and I chit-chat with the manager for a few minutes. He goes, I said, you sure haven't got any rooms? You're all locked up, you're tied up, haven't got 1 or 2 left? No, he said, I have a couple rooms, but I had to guarantee them until 6 o'clock today. So he said, if the guy doesn't show up, he said, you can have them. I said, well, okay, sounds okay to me if the guy doesn't show up. And this is could be 4 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever. So I waddle back to my buddy's room, and we're all sitting there chit-chatting and bitching, complaining, and doing whatever we're doing, and hopefully we'll play a couple of games and don't get our ass kicked too bad and get the hell home, right? Mm-hmm. It rolls around 5:30 or something, 5:45. So, shit, I might as well walk over. I mean, this guy's not here by now. He's not coming, right? So I walk across the parking lot. It's freezing cold. I mean, it's like 30 below. Anyway, I walk across the parking lot, and I say to the hotel manager, or motel, I guess it was, says, has that guy showed up yet? I said, no. I said, he hasn't shown up. He said, he's got about, at maximum half an hour to show up. Otherwise, I got to get those rooms up. So what the hell's that guy's name? He said, well, I'm waiting for a guy by the name of Klinck. Yeah, he said, he's got 4 rooms. He's been booked. I said, I told him when they booked, they'll hold him till 6 o'clock on Wednesday, and that's it. I said, are you sure about this? The guy goes, yeah. I said, I'm waiting for this guy. I couldn't get my hand in my wallet to pull out my driver's license fast enough to show him what the hell was going on here. He said, for Christ's sake, it's me. So I had a big laugh, and he goes, well, okay. He said, 4 rooms. You want them all? I said, you're damn right. So now I walk across the parking lot. So I go in, and the guys are saying, yeah, what's the big deal now? I said, you guys get your ass out of this room and go get your stuff. I said, look at this. We got 4 rooms in this hotel. They say, what? I said, yeah, they're waiting for some asshole to show up. I said, what's the guy's name? They said, it's Klinck. So we got 4 rooms here. We had them forever. How dumb can a skip be, right?
You moved up from a half a star to 2.5 stars.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe even a 3. And we thought it was a 5. Yeah, we were pretty happy about that, Kev.
I think I forgot to ask you about, because I think you brought up the Doblons at one point.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when they would play a playdown game, there was no bell, right? And certainly there were no shot clocks. We all know that, or game clocks.
No.
So how long would a game against the Doblons, a 12-end game against the Doblons take? Or even a 10-end, I guess?
Or even a 10-end. I mean, you could count on probably easy half hour.
How long? An end?
No. If a game was... 10-end game would take you 2 hours and 15 minutes. A 10-end game wouldn't take you 2.5 hours, but you could expect to be free there with the Blondes because they were always so slow.
So it could add 30 minutes.
Oh, they could do it easy. I mean, without even trying. They were just that way. That's just the way they were. They just didn't do things in a hurry, and just about every time we played them, we wouldn't have to worry about that because they would kick our ass way before the 10th end would roll around anyway. So, but to go for a 12-end game, I mean, it's really ridiculous. I mean, a lot of skiffs would be ready to call the next shot and play it right away, and your team would be in the hack ready to shoot. They were never that kind of quick. They were more methodical and tried to do stuff, the same routine all the time, and you got to adjust your glasses 2 or 3 times and count to 10 and take a deep breath.
Was Gary like that as well? Because I always remember watching Claire, and I remember watching him in later years. He still had those ticks in the hack, right? Yeah, he would sit in the hack for what seemed like an eternity as he, adjusted the watch, the glasses, the broom, and back and forth.
No, but he was like that, and you just put up with it because you knew we were going to be there for a while. So
was his brother like that then too, in the hack as well, or it was just that they would take time?
No, not as bad.
Yeah.
No, not as bad because he wasn't making the last shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were nice guys to curl against, that kind of thing, but they were just time-consuming, whereas you didn't have to be that way.
Mm.
That's the way they were. You just knew it. So, you're going to be out there playing them, then go ahead. Or get out there early. Let them kick your ass. Because they won a lot of games,
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Maybe they froze people out. I don't know.
It likely did, yeah. Well, hey, this was fun. I'm glad you could do it. Well, you take care, Colonel.
Kev.
All right, good chatting with you.
Okay, thanks very much for doing this.
You got it. Take care.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.